Piedi, August Falchigo D, Terra Incogweirdo, Macarjas, hello and welcome to Terra Incogweirdo. Today we're going to talk about Auntie Angie's psychic development from her 20s and all the way through to present day. So you would think we'd have a lot of ground to cover, but things sort of slowed down for me in my 20s. That was about the time that I was really honing in on my ability to do psychometry. So holding objects in my hand, I would see where they came from. And holding people's hands, I learned that I could read their past lives. When I did that, it took me a while to figure out what was going on. But with all of the psychic abilities, it's just something that I learned how to use over time. In my early 20s, I had my 2 children, and my focus on my psychic practice did start to slow down at that time as my mind was completely drawn into the secular world and 100% consumed with raising my children and making sure they were happy, healthy, and safe. Kind of took up my whole bandwidth, but I did take a few psychic development classes in my early 20s. That's when I discovered who all of my spirit guides were as they related to my chakra system. Simply that was achieved through meditating on each chakra until the information was presented to me. Any of you could go forth at this moment and do the same thing and connect with the guardians of your chakras. They be very helpful to you as you go forward. So I would definitely encourage you to do that. My early 20s is also the time that I was lucky enough to take some classes and attend some lectures by the wonderful native First Nations medicine woman, Mary Thunder of the Montana Ho-Chunk tribe. Mary was such a beautiful and wonderful person, and she taught me much about how to be a human being. And you would think that that would be something that should just come naturally to you, but I think if you look around this world today, you might agree with me that not all of us know how to be human beings. So she taught me a lot about compassion and opening myself up to it, to be able to hear the planet and Mother Earth, and to gain wisdom from my environment. Taking classes with Mary led me to sort of develop what I call environmental divination, and I will be doing a video about environmental divination later on. But as I said, in my early 20s, things kind of slowed down for me because my focus went from the paranormal and the psychic to the physical reality of having children and raising children. So I was, and having a job where I would be able to support my children, because for the majority of their lives I have been a single mom. So I lived on the East Coast from the time I was born until I was 40 years old. And again, during that time between when my kids were born and when I moved to the West Coast, I was mainly doing, I would do psychic readings for people, but I think I discussed this before, that I quickly found out that I did not like to charge money for for doing psychic readings. If you've been listening to Terra Incogweirdo, you'll know that I have said that my success rate with tarot cards is about 80%. And, you know, if you were paying money to someone for something and they said, there's an 80% chance of me delivering on what you're paying me for, would you want to pay them for that? I know I wouldn't. And I just never really felt comfortable about charging for something that I could not 100% guarantee. Okay, that's just me. No shade on any other psychics out there doing their thing. We all have our paths, and being a psychic for a living was just not my path. It just did not resonate with me. I felt much more comfortable in sharing my psychic gifts with those who need them. And you know, those who ask me, and that's just the way I found out, especially during my 20s and my 30s, that was like the proper way for me to proceed. So there was, you know, some tarot reading, mostly for friends and family. There was also a good bit of trying to help people who had hauntings or unexplained phenomena happening either to them, it seemed either attached to them or in the house that they lived in. I did quite a bit of house and aura clearing at that time, and again, it was just something that I was doing because, you know, I love people and I want them to be happy. And I was also, you know, if you've been listening to my stories, I think you know already that I have a real compassion for what we call ghosts, entities that are no longer in a body. And, you know, there's any number of species of entities that are not in a body. We call them ghosts. They could be shadow people. There's no way of really knowing how many different types of entities there are out there, but whether they seemed positive or negative, I felt compassion for them. And I feel that all of us are in the process of learning and growing and becoming, and just because, you know, I'm dealing with an energy that is, you know, not in a body, that doesn't mean I shouldn't be kind and thoughtful to that entity and try to help it, even if it's presenting to me as being evil or angry or scary, you know, any of those things. So that compassion for the phenomena that I was dealing with was really growing in me from, you know, as I got older. So eventually I felt that I had to leave the East Coast. The East Coast was never the right place for Auntie Angie. You know, I'm a person who is driven very much by their heart, and I go where my intuition leads me and where my soul leads me. And the East Coast was a place where I felt like I and everyone I knew was strictly being defined by what they did for a living and how much money they made and where they went to college, and things that were not on the top of my list, you know, like connecting with people and being loving and compassionate and helpful to people, and sharing. There's a huge, I have a huge creative life, and being able to express and share that creative life is also very important to me. And, my psychic abilities were definitely something that were not extremely appreciated. Let me rephrase that. They were almost not at all appreciated. So far from extremely appreciated. On the East Coast, because it's so focused on career, being psychic, especially as a career, and as I told you, I decided not to go down that path, but just being a psychic person made you suspect on the East Coast. And I felt very much like a fish out of water. I felt very uncomfortable. And then I happened to take a trip out to Northern California, where I visited some relatives of mine. And after spending 2 weeks in Northern California, I knew I had found my place in the world, because out there it was more about quality of life, and are you enjoying your days, and what you're doing. And people were a lot more open to the fact that I have psychic abilities, and they were a lot more excited about that. And they were a lot more excited about my creative being and my creative life. And I just understood after 2 weeks out on the coast in Northern California that's where I needed to be. So that indeed is where I went. I moved to the Pacific Coast in Northern California in my, actually I think I was 39 or 40 when I moved out there. So that was a time in my life where I was a lot more free to really, my children were teenagers. One of them had already graduated high school, and the other one was getting there. And it was coming to be the time in my life where I could start focusing, somewhat on myself. So there was one really major development that hadn't really cropped up before, and this happened in my mid-30s. From the time I was little, there were these symbols in my head that I started to draw them when I was a really little kid. Before I could write letters or anything, I'd see this sort of spirally symbol in my head, and it was very specific in how I had to draw the lines, and which line came first and which came second and which came third, and there was also a sound that had to be made while I was drawing this symbol. And as I said, this kind of thing started off when I was very, very young. And indeed, one day I was sitting at my kitchen table with my incog husband, who you have perhaps met in the Terra Incogweirdo video, and a friend of mine, and I was drawing that symbol that I've been drawing since I was a little kid. And my friend looked down at what I was drawing, and she goes, oh, I didn't know you knew Reiki. And I was like, I don't know. What is Reiki? I don't know Reiki. What are you talking about? And she goes, you're drawing a Reiki symbol. And I was like, what? And my husband was like, yeah, I told you that thing that you draw all the time looks like a Reiki symbol. And I was like, what are you talking about? So I decided to look more into this Reiki thing. I mean, I'd heard Reiki's got a pretty bad rap out there. People sure do love to make fun of Reiki masters and just Reiki practitioners and Reiki in general. And all I knew is that it was a system of hands-on healing, and I didn't really know anything more about that. Well, there was a Reiki master in the town where I lived who was taking on students. So before I went to meet her for the first time to see if she would take me on as a student. I, of course, did, some investigation myself, and I found out that the symbol that I had been drawing from the time I was a little kid is called the Shoku Rei, and it is a very key symbol to the Reiki process. And I have proof of this, okay? And this in and of itself is a very strange story. So here, my friends, is my favorite book from the time I was a child, The Dragon Who Liked to Spit Fire by Judy Varga. Okay, I love this book so much. This is the first book I ever learned to read. And when my mom died, right before I moved, by the way, to the West Coast, my mom died. And we, of course, we had to sell her house, so we cleared out the attic, and all of my childhood books were given away. So this book that I'd had from the time I was little was given away, and when I asked about it, nobody knew. They just told me it got donated. So that was, heavy on my heart, but what can you do? Stuff like that happens. So years later, when I'm living on the West Coast, I get it into my head that I have to have this book. I have to have me a copy of The Dragon Who Liked to Spit Fire, just because it just meant so much to me. So I went online and I just randomly found a copy of the book and I bought it. And when it came to me, I noticed that the package where it came from, the address was a Goodwill store about 5 miles away from my childhood home. Okay, and I was like, wow. I mean, what are the odds? And then when I opened the book, people, I knew it was mine, and I knew this was the actual book that I had, right, as a kid. Now, how do I know this? Because as soon as I opened the front, see all the scribbles? This was my first attempt, right, at making this Reiki symbol, and here it is up here. It's pretty good on this side, right? Here it is. Okay, the Reiki symbol. And I very specifically remember drawing this in the book and and then I was like, okay, this is crazy. This can't be my book. But then I remembered that, okay, I had my godparents had a son named Paul, and he was over one day, and I wanted to know how to spell his name. So I had this book in my hand, and my mom wrote his name in script and printed it in the back of the book. And there it is. So there you go. I know, in fact, that this book The dragon who liked to spit fire was separated from me for many years, but then it came back to me, the actual book, with my first attempts ever to draw that Reiki symbol. Okay, so that's pretty crazy, right? Now, speaking of Reiki, this one right here. My little Lou, my pleasure, Llewellyn. Pascha, hi. Say hi. Oh, I love you, Lou. I love you so much. Oh, I love my Lou. She is such a sweet girl. And she is a Reiki miracle. And let me tell you the story about Pascha Llewellyn, my first Reiki miracle success. So, I studied Reiki in Northern California with my teacher, Salina Rain. And I studied Reiki. You know, I've heard that people study Reiki for like 2 days and they go through like all 3 levels and they go through the master level in like 2 weekends or something. Well, you know, to each his own. Reiki is an amazing practice, so you know I don't really think that I don't feel like I can really cast judgment on anybody and how they're coming to Reiki. If you do it and you learn it, no matter how long or short it takes you to learn it, and you go out, you go forth into the world, and you bring that loving, compassionate, healing energy to people, then there's nothing bad to be said about that. So good on you, all of you who are out there doing Reiki. So I myself studied Reiki for 2.5 years, and it was very, very intense. The whole process was very intense and also empowering. I had so much positive feedback to the Reiki work that I was doing. And it's just nice to know that there really is a way to transfer the love and care and compassion that you feel for others, and you can actually transfer it to others, and in certain instances it can heal. It can heal people and these kind of people too. So let me tell you the story of Pascha Llewellyn. I don't know if you can see it right there. That's my wolf dog, my beloved Isa, who is no longer with me and who I miss so much every day. So when we moved up from Northern California to Oregon, I believe it was in 2014, we moved to a little town outside of Oregon along the Clackamas River. And one day I was taking Isa for a walk, and she was rooting around these bushes, and I could not get her to leave. And I realized that there was this little kitten, this little, like, not quite newborn. She was probably maybe 3 weeks old. And it was the saddest thing. She was dragging her back legs behind her. And her back legs were tangled in the weeds, and she was really scared of my huge black wolf dog, but she couldn't get away. And for some reason, on that day, when I walked out the door and I walked past the rack where we hang all of our stuff, and I had my dog's leash, there was an empty backpack hooked right there. And I looked at it and I said to myself, I'm going to need that backpack today. I'm taking it with me. Never done it before, and I've never done it since. But that day, that one day, I had an empty backpack with me. It was for her. It was for my little Llewellyn. So, in her fear, because she was clearly feral, and in her inability to walk, because clearly someone had stepped on this poor kitten, she dragged herself away and she tumbled down a hillside. Okay, well, I thought I was gonna lose my mind at this point. So I tied my dog off to a tree. I tied East off to a tree, and I ran down the hillside, and I found her on her back up against a stump. And man, she was fighting mad. She was, aren't ya? Come here. Come here. I'm talking about you. And she was mad. She was hissing at me and fighting me, clawing, just tried to kill me. So I scooped her up in the bag and we took her to the vet. Didn't we? We took her to the vet. And the vet, what you doing? Does that smell good? And the vet told me that there must be something. She's making that face. It smells funny. Oh, Toto, I love you so much. You, my girl. Oh, my sweet girl. So the vet told me that her pelvis had been crushed, that somebody had stepped on her, and that it was very unlikely that she was going to survive. So I told them to give me some pain med for her, and I was going to take her home. And hopefully she would pass peacefully with me in the night. So that first night, I had to find somewhere safe to put her because I had the big wolf dog, and I had, at that point, four other cats that were very territorial and mean, and I didn't want anybody to hurt her. So we had just bought a washer dryer, and we had a huge washer box. So I took the washer box and I put it inside of a closet, and I got her all set up, and I put her inside this huge washer box inside a closet, and I left it. You are licking the skin off my face. And I left the door open, didn't I? I left the door open. And where were you in the morning when I came to get you? Where were you? Nowhere to be found. What the hell? Here is this kitten. Okay, wait, sorry, back up. The night before, gave her pain medicine, and I did Reiki on her. We did Reiki. We did Reiki on her until she fell asleep. Sorry, that was an important part of the story. And I did Reiki on my beautiful girl until she fell asleep, and I put her in the box. And then the next day I went to get her, and she was nowhere to be found. I was flipping out. I'm like, where did she go? She can't. How could she go anywhere? I couldn't. She was dragging her legs around. So I'm frantically looking around everywhere for this cat, and then, casual as you please, Pascha strolls out casually from behind the couch, walking on all fours like there was nothing wrong. Oh my God. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I mean, would you believe it? You picked up a cat the day before that has a broken pelvis. The doctor tells you she won't live, and then you do Reiki on her, and the next morning she's prancing around the room like there's nothing wrong. It was insane. You were insane. You were a miracle. So I took her back to the vet, and I was like, you're not going to believe this. And I take her out of the cage and I put her on the floor and she starts walking around, and I swear to God, I thought the vet was going to pass out. The vet started screaming and she yelled for all of the attendants that were there the day before. She's like, oh my God, come in and look at this cat. And everybody was absolutely floored and astounded, and they were like, what did you do? And I said, I just did Reiki on her. And there she goes. She freaking spontaneously healed. Reiki miracle. Yeah, you my girl. You want to go? You're caught. You're caught on me. Okay, you want to go? All right. That's my little Pascha Lou. And also, she couldn't pee by herself for the first 4 months. She couldn't pee. And I had to, I call it juicing the cat. I had to express her urine 3 times a day. Juicing the Pascha. That's right. I juiced the Pascha every day for 3 months, and she was taking medicine to help her neural connections reestablish themselves. And one day I was in the kitchen and I heard a cat peeing in the litter box, and I turned around and I looked, and it was Pascha peeing by herself. And oh my God, what a day that was. And now my beautiful Pascha Llewellyn, my beautiful Pascha, she's 10 years old now. The cat that was not supposed to live through the night is now 10 years old. And that is 100% down to Reiki. She is my little Reiki miracle. And I named her Pascha because 2 of my very good friends, their gray cat named Pascha, had died just the day before I found her. And I knew that she was the new Pascha. And I did not know this, but I later found out that their Pascha had the same thing as my Pascha does. So she besides not being able to pee, she also has no peristalsis, so she can't really poop on her own. And she has to be given like Miralax with every single meal. So her poop just kind of makes its way out and you find it like it. Thank God it's not like it comes out in very nice, compact little, we call them kitty rokas, because you wrap them up in a paper towel and they look like a roka. But my friend's Pascha also did that, so there's a lot of flippin' similarities, between Pascha 1 and Pascha 2, right? So Reiki was indeed one of the more recent, I would call that part of psychic development, because when I do Reiki on people, and I mostly work on animals, just so you know, but when I do Reiki, I find like my intuition kicks in so hard, and I find all kinds of strange things. Like I remember one time I was doing Reiki on a girl, and I was working on her crown chakra. I was like, there's this white cat like sitting on your crown chakra, and she has this little gray like dot on her chin and a pink collar with a belt. And she was like, oh my God, that was my cat from when I was a little kid. I was like, oh, well, okay, well, she's guarding your crown chakra for you. And also, like, I can remember, well, there's just people, we hide our traumas in our bodies. And as a Reiki master, I have definitely found that. You will, as I'm working on somebody, I find things in the strangest of places. I remember a guy I was working on had an early childhood trauma, involving an incident where his brother almost died, and I found that like in his kneecap. You just never flippin' know. Reiki gets a really bad rap, but I have seen it work miracles indeed. And it's an amazing practice, people. So maybe start doing it and see what you think. Yeah, okay. All right. Pascha's ready to go. She's biting me now. She's feisty. Pascha's always been a feisty girl. You love you. You want to go? Ow. She's caught. Okay. Bye-bye. You going? Now you're just going to whip your tail in front of my face. Okay. All right. Pascha's left a kitty roca on me. It's inevitable. And so, my friends, I feel as though that is the cue and the time for which I should wrap up this episode of Terra Incogweirdo about, my late life stuff and the Reiki stuff, because that's kind of like the last practice that I really picked up. And then that brings us into the room in Oregon. Well, we left off by the river up near Portland, and about 2 years later, we moved here into the middle of the Oregon coastal range, where I started to experience something completely new and completely different, something that has never been on my radar. And I'm going to give you a hint and tell you that it tends to be hairy and it tends to have really big feet. So we'll talk about that next time, or soon. Maybe not next time, because we might do Tarot Incogweirdo next time. But I am going to then bring you the information about Auntie Angie living in cryptid land up here in the Oregon coastal range. Oh my, what a strange life we live. Yes, indeed. Well, my Incogweirdos, thank you guys so much for being here today. I hope you enjoyed the story of Pascha, my Reiki miracle, my little sweetie pea. Love her so much. Don't we love our pets? We love them all so very much. If anybody has any pets that need any Reiki energy, write their names down in the comments section below, and I will beam Reiki to them. There is a Reiki symbol that you learn that transcends space and time, and so you can do Reiki to anyone or anything over the course of history, back and forward. So space-time does not inhibit the transmission of Reiki whatsoever. So if you have any pets, because I do really resonate with animals, feel free to put their names down in the comment section below and I will beam some Reiki at them. Okay. Thank you for being here, guys. If you have any stories that you would like to share here on Terra Incogweirdo, put them down in the comments and I'll read them online, or send them in to me to my Gmail address at terraincogweirdo@gmail.com. That's also to be found in my channel description and down in the notes below. So thanks for being here, guys. I love you all very much. Reiki blessings to all. And I will see you next time here on Terra Incogweirdo, the land where para is normal. Slang of all you beautiful Incogweirdos. We'll see you next time. Sun.